status of Dorian Thompson-Off?
Dorian is unavailable.
Had to ask.
I know.
Okay.
And
he's not available today?
It's a protocol. He will not be available today.
Okay.
After a few days of practice, how did they look to you?
They've been great. They've been really sharp. We've changed the timing of training, so obviously we started off a little bit early, and we started to build up to 2-hour training sessions. So they've handled it really, really well. We've got a lot of good situational work in the first couple of days, and got more into coaches on the sideline, players on the field. They got to fix things without being coached, and putting a lot of good things on tape and teaching. And they've been great so far. So we've got really good leadership from our older guys, and then the young kids have really fallen right in line. They've kind of picked up and have really accelerated. But I think it's because our older players are doing a really good job of helping those young guys.
You mentioned leadership before, being player-led and not coach-fed. What does that look like to you when you're out on the practice field?
Just corrections that normally a coach would make that a player makes. He doesn't wait for a coach to say something when, if an older player sees something where he can help out a younger guy, just kind of give him a little bit of either a coaching point or, this is what we do here, this is what coach means. You see that a lot. Our guys are trying to help out each other, and because you have no idea when you get to the season who's going to play, and you can't say, geez, I wish I helped that freshman out 2 weeks ago, so he's actually lining up next to me now. So they've done a really good job. Our players really care about each other, so they're just trying to make everybody better around them.
Do you have an updated status on Devin Apu and Jay Toya?
Devin Apu is enrolled and is practicing. I think his first practice was either yesterday or the day before. So, like everybody, there's a protocol of dress. So this is our first day in full pads, but Devin hasn't gone through the full acclimatization period, so he'll go through that. Jay has gone through that. Jay's been here since day one, so Jay will be in full. Devin will be, I think Devin gets put on shoulder pads today, but he can't put on pads for 2 more days.
You talked a little bit about Devin's recruitment. It was kind of a unique one.
Yeah, I mean, we obviously loved Devin coming out. Coach Kafusi had really identified him early. Had a great relationship with him and Coach Moon over at Pacifica. And then at the last second, Notre Dame came into the picture and he decided to go there. But when you talk to Devin, he never got a chance to take a visit. That was one of the unique parts of COVID that I think everybody had to deal with. Everything was done over Zoom. So, when he got out there, I think from all understandings, he was doing a good job at Notre Dame, but I just think he felt like he wanted to be home. So when he went to transfer portal, we contacted him after he went to portal and brought him over and, showed him around for the first, so he could see what we had to offer. And then he committed to us. So, we were excited to have him back home. We've always loved, how hard he plays and love his upside. I think he's going to be a tremendous college football player.
And no hesitation with the fact that he had verbally committed and then flipped like a week before the signing period?
No, I just think there's a lot of things that happened during COVID that I don't think, people really, when you look back maybe 5 years from now, 10 years from now, you can kind of put things into perspective. But it was a different time for everybody. So he was always very honest and upfront with us. So, and it wasn't like one of those things where you picked up the paper one day and found out he wasn't here. He had always kept in great contact with myself and Coach Kafusi, so we knew exactly where he stood. He was a really quality young man, and we were just excited to have him.
Eligibility-wise, have you talked to Aaron about what they might be for fall for Jay and both?
Yeah, we haven't talked about any of that stuff right now. We're just trying to get everybody in and practicing, and then we'll get to that. For us, it's really, you start to get to week 1, like that's when you start to kind of hone in who's available, who's not available.
How deep is this team comparatively to college teams you've coached since you've been here?
Compared to my first years here, and that's all I can compare it to, is this is the deepest team we've had since we've been here. So I think comparing teams from different years and different schools is, I don't really think of it that way. So, but I think since we've been here, obviously, even in the spring, we had 115 players in the spring. My first spring here, we had 65. So, it's obviously the biggest concern, especially when you play the schedules that we play. You go from our out-of-conference schedule into conference schedule. You got to have depth, and that's what is always tested over time in any of the Power 5 conferences. It's the teams that have the best depth, I think, overall, that will be able to survive. Because obviously it's a game of attrition at some point in time, and you're going to lose some players at some point in time. But do you have quality backups that can go in when you lose your first line players? And we feel like we've improved our depth everywhere overall. And that was part of the plan. So.
I know you just want to have a great Wednesday. Yeah, it's Wednesday. You just want to have a great Wednesday.
It's Wednesday, yeah.
But do you even take time to notice things that are going on with some of your opponents down the road? Do you even notice that LSU lost their starting quarterback for the year? Does it even factor in?
Well, right now it doesn't, but I was unaware of that right now.
And Miles Brennan is injured his foot and is out for the year.
He was in a quarterback competition, though, I think, with the other kids.
Right, but he's definitely out for the year now. I didn't know if stuff like that even pops up on your radar yet.
We haven't talked about that, but, because we're not into really preparing for LSU right now. We're still just kind of preparing for ourselves. But if this was Wednesday of the LSU week, that would be very high on our radar. But right now, it's I feel bad for him. That's awful because he's a really good football player. And it would have been a real challenge to go against them. The other kid's really good too, played against Florida. So, but yeah, we're concerned with, this is our first full padded practice, and what are we going to get out of our guys today? So.
You do talk about having a good day Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, but is the program where you envisioned it? Player development, scheme, depth, everything. Is this what you've envisioned so far?
There's a lot of things that, are you hoping and wishing for things, or what are the reality of what things can happen? So I think part of it for us is can we improve incrementally over time, and that's the way this works. And I believe we have improved incrementally over time. Just the question Tracy asked was a great question. Is our depth it's better than it's ever been. So that's part of the process. But there's development goes into everything. What are we doing in the classroom? What are we doing in the community? What's our day-to-day look like? How consistent are we? How mature are we? But everything's always, right now, is trending in the right direction. But that's a great thing about life. Everything can be sailing pretty good, and then the next day you kind of get knocked down. But it's how you respond to getting knocked down is the key thing. And I think that's what we're trying to impart upon our guys here is using the life lessons that football can teach you to be able to help you with everything else. But I love the mindset of this team, and I love where they are right now. So.
Without Dorian, who got the most reps yesterday?
I think it was even. It usually is even. We're not concerned because you're not in game week of the amount of reps. It's just trying to get things on tape for everybody. And the good ones, the really good ones, can learn from other people. So while you're in there, are you getting a mental rep? So if Chase is in there, is Garbers and Chase Artopius getting mental reps from that, and vice versa when the other guys are in. So that's the way we've always kind of approached it. We're always in an even distribution of, we have 3 reps of the ones, 3 reps of the twos, 3 reps of the threes. We're always training 3 groups at this point in time during camp, so who's in with the ones, twos, and threes is kind of inconsequential for us. So I think Rye did a good job yesterday just kind of rotating those 3 guys through. So each of them got reps with the ones, each of them got reps with the twos, each of them got reps with the threes. So the more they can get on the field and just get the experience of it, the better off we're going to be. Exactly who is the surrounding cast around them isn't the most important thing. It's still schematically, are we making the right decisions? Is the ball going to the right place? Are we making the right checks when the defense presents us something? So who's with who isn't as important right now. As you start to get closer to game week, obviously then now the reps start to, because really we start to get the scouted periods, and then there's only two groups getting reps, and usually we go, probably 70-30, ones to twos, and then it becomes a question of who's running with those groups. But right now, everything being evenly distributed, that part, who's getting what, we haven't even really talked about it. So as long as we got a quarterback in there to take a snap, then we're pretty good. So.
Does this set back Dorian at all in his preparation for the season?
That he was unavailable today? I hope not.
We've got 1 minute left, guys.
Okay. And not with Dorian. That kid works his tail off. He'll be ready. That'll drop of an eye. So.
You talked about recruiting during the COVID era. Just how different was that? How did you kind of work around that as best you could to give the players the best idea of
the biggest issue for everybody was we weren't allowed to leave campus, and they weren't allowed to come on campus. So everything was just turned into virtual. So there was a lot of Zooms and just trying to stay in touch and present and educate whoever we were recruiting about what the opportunity at UCLA is that a good fit for what they're looking for, and what are their goals and aspirations, and what do they want to get out of their collegiate experience. So, we really had to highlight that. But the unique part about it for everybody is it was the same challenge for every school. None of us were allowed to have anybody on campus, and none of us were allowed to go evaluate in person. So you just kind of had to deal with it as it came. So, but it was interesting. That first, in June when the last group of kids came in, because we had a couple early enrollees, but when that last group came in, I think there were 8 or 9 kids that we had never met in person. Deshaun Morrell, Christian Burkholder, some of those kids that were from a distance that if we normally would have gone out, we had them identified, we would have gone to see them that spring, during spring recruiting. You just had a, like, oh, okay, I've seen him on a Zoom, like that. Now that's what he looks like. So, but they've been great. It's if this ends up being our best recruiting class, then maybe we should just do that all the time. So, but that'll take 3 or 4 years to figure that part out. But really pleased with who we have. It was just unique. I thought our coaching staff and our recruiting staff did a great job of, making sure we can constantly stay in touch with those guys. We did a lot more group work on our recruiting, and I think the other recruits helped out a lot too, because they stayed connected with each other through Zoom, over the course of that time too. So, the Kirkwoods and some of those guys that were kind of leaders in that class, those guys actually developed a pretty good bond over. The technological part of it is just, gives you an opportunity to reach out and touch people a little bit better, but it still doesn't replace face-to-face. So we're glad that we can actually get back face-to-face. So.
All right, thanks, Coach.
All right, guys, thank
Thanks,
you.
Coach.